It was a sweltering afternoon in the city, the kind where heat waves distort reality, making even the calmest streets feel chaotic. A small crowd gathered outside the local convenience store, their murmurs blending with the distant hum of traffic. Among them stood a young black girl, no more than 12, her backpack slightly too large for her frame, her curls glinting in the harsh sunlight. She was quiet, almost invisible to the bustling world around her, except to one man, a uniformed police officer leaning casually against a patrol car, his badge gleaming as though to remind everyone of the power he held. The officer smirked as he watched the girl fumble at the soda aisle, muttering under her breath about prices and coins. Something about her presence irked him, though he couldn't quite articulate why. So he approached her, his posture exuding authority, his tone sharp and condescending. "What's your story, kid?" he asked, his eyes scanning her like she was a specimen on display. The girl straightened, clutching her backpack strapped tightly. She spoke carefully, almost rehearsing the words. "My mom, she's in the Special Forces." The officer laughed, a short, dismissive snort that echoed unervingly in the cramped aisle. "Special Forces? Yeah, sure, sweetie. Maybe she fights in video games, too." His laughter carried an edge, the kind that made it clear he didn't just doubt her. He belittled her, her family, her very identity. The crowd around them shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, pretending not to witness the small injustice unfolding, while others whispered among themselves, sharing silent disbelief. The girl's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, as if summoned by her words, a tall, commanding figure appeared in the doorway. Every step she took radiated precision and authority, her uniform immaculate, medals catching the light like shards of gold. The laughter in the aisle faltered. The officer's smirk wavered, and the girl, who moments ago had been minimized by mockery, now held her chin high, her gaze steady. The air changed, heavy with tension, and in that instant, the invisible barrier between doubt and respect began to crack. No one in that store could forget what happened next. The girl's name was Amara Thompson, and she lived in a modest apartment in the heart of the city with her mother, Captain Layla Thompson, a decorated officer of the United States Special Forces. While Amara's friends often boasted about their parents' office jobs or weekend hobbies, she carried the quiet pride of someone who knew the discipline, courage, and sacrifices her mother endured daily. But this wasn't something Amara flaunted. It wasn't a conversation starter at school or a social media post to gain attention. She mentioned it only when necessary, only when truth demanded recognition. Life for Amara was a balance of normal childhood experiences and the heightened reality of having a parent whose work was life and death serious. While other kids fretted over homework or missed sleepovers, Amara worried about the calls her mother might receive, the sudden deployments, the rigorous training regimens that left Layla exhausted but resolute. She had learned to be independent early on, developing resilience that many adults fail to cultivate in a lifetime. Captain Layla Thompson, Amara's mother, was a woman of principle and precision. Her colleagues often described her as relentless, someone whose presence commanded respect in any room, whether in briefing halls overseas or boardrooms back home. Yet, for all her toughness, she had a softness reserved solely for Amara, a rare combination of warrior and mother that shaped the young girl's identity. Despite the pride she felt in her mother's achievements, Amara carried the invisible weight of being a black girl in a world that frequently underestimated her. She had encountered sneers, doubted capabilities, and moments when she felt invisible, her words dismissed simply because of her age, gender, or skin color. Even in her community, prejudice often lingered subtly, threading its way through smiles that didn't reach eyes or casual remarks meant to diminish. On that fateful day at the convenience store, Amara had gone out to pick up snacks for her mother, who had been returning from a grueling training session. It was a simple errand, yet it became the stage for a confrontation she didn't expect. A confrontation that would test not only the respect owed to her mother, but the courage she carried within herself. The officer, Officer Mark Reynolds, had a reputation. Colleagues whispered about his impatience with the lively youth of the neighborhood, his dismissive attitude toward anyone who didn't fit his image of propriety. To him, Amara's statement about her mother sounded like an excuse, a story meant to inflate her significance. Yet in that instant, He underestimated more than just a girl. He underestimated history, discipline, and a quiet power that radiated from someone trained to command respect. Amara's composure was remarkable. Her heartbeat thumped loudly in her chest, but her voice was steady when she replied to the officer. There was no bravado, no attempt to shout him down. There was just truth, simple and undeniable. Her words hung in the air, a challenge cloaked in innocence, daring the world around her to dismiss them further. And then the door swung open, and everything shifted. Layla Thompson walked into the store with the precision of a soldier, each movement deliberate, each gaze purposeful. Her presence transformed the atmosphere instantly. Customers glanced up, startled by the aura of authority she carried. Even the small bell above the door seemed to chime differently, a sharp reminder that the ordinary was about to collide with the extraordinary. Officer Reynolds turned, initially expecting a store clerk or a concerned bystander. Instead, he met the gaze of a woman whose reputation preceded her, whose service record was not just impressive, it was legendary. Layla's medals, her sharp posture, the subtle but unmistakable aura of command, all made it immediately clear that she was not someone to be trifled with. Amara, she said softly, nodding to her daughter. There was pride in that nod, a quiet acknowledgement that this moment was a testament not just to training or discipline, but to resilience and courage cultivated over years. Reynolds, still attempting to mask his surprise, stammered a half-hearted apology. Layla didn't need to respond verbally. Her mere presence conveyed the message clearly. Disrespect, ignorance, and prejudice were intolerable in her proximity. The officer's earlier laughter seemed small, petty, almost childish against the weight of the reality he faced now. The crowd that had been lingering, sensing tension but uncertain of the outcome, started to murmur. Some whispered about Layla's accomplishments. Others exchanged glances filled with a quiet satisfaction of witnessing justice unfold in real time. Amara felt a rush of relief, but also a surge of empowerment. She realized that being underestimated was not weakness. It was the opportunity for the truth to shine brighter when it finally surfaced. Reynolds attempted to regain control, to assert authority over the situation. "Ma'am, I was only," he started, but the words faltered, caught in the gravity of a presence he could not dominate. Layla's eyes, calm yet firm, met his. In that gaze was the weight of years of service, training, and the unyielding knowledge that respect was earned, not assumed. Amara's chest swelled with pride. She watched as the officer, who had moments ago belittled her, shrank under the silent authority of her mother. It was not vengeance, not aggression. It was a natural consequence of standing up for oneself and being backed by the truth of one's worth. Yet the tension was not over. Reynolds' colleagues, hearing the incident over the radio, began to arrive. They approached hesitantly, unsure whether to intervene or observe. Some whispered about the irony of the situation. A young black girl and her mother, a special forces officer, teaching a lesson in dignity to those trained to uphold authority. Amara, feeling the eyes on her, realized a subtle but powerful lesson in play, that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is simply insisting on being seen and heard when the world assumes you cannot be. Meanwhile, Layla handled the situation with remarkable composure. She didn't lecture the officer publicly. She didn't escalate. She allowed the truth of her accomplishments and the undeniable proof of her daughter's words to do all the work. The store, once a mundane space, had transformed into a classroom on respect, humility, and the often unseen power of truth. As minutes ticked by, the officer attempted to salvage his dignity, muttering excuses and explanations. But no one believed him, not truly. The crowd's energy shifted from apprehension to admiration, their attention fixed on Layla and Amara. In those moments, the store became a microcosm of society's larger struggle, a clash between prejudice and recognition, between ignorance and earned authority. The situation reached its zenith when Reynolds, flustered and desperate to reclaim control, raised his voice. His tone attempted to assert power, but every word he spoke fell flat against Layla's presence. She did not raise her voice, did not make a scene. Her calmness, her discipline, and the undeniable authority she embodied created an invisible wall that he could not breach. Amara, standing slightly behind her mother, felt a surge of vindication. Every laugh, every dismissive remark from the officer replayed in her mind, only now it fueled a quiet but intense satisfaction. This was the moment she had internally rehearsed countless times, not as revenge, but as justice. Layla stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Reynolds. She explained, in a measured tone, her achievements, her training, the mission she had led, and the rigorous standards required in the Special Forces. Each word was precise, deliberate, and factual, leaving no room for doubt. Reynolds' face shifted through confusion, embarrassment, and finally reluctant acknowledgement. He could not argue with history, with documented service, or with the undeniable truth standing before him. Then, in a subtle but profoundly symbolic gesture, Amara stepped forward. She lifted her chin, no longer the quiet, underestimated girl, but someone who had witnessed injustice and survived it with dignity. In her eyes was a reflection of her mother's strength, her own resilience, and the unspoken message that respect cannot be demanded. It must be recognized. The tension in the store cracked. Reynolds, for the first time in the encounter, lowered his eyes. He stammered another apology, this time quieter, less offensive. The crowd's attention remained fixed on Layla and Amara, their whispers filled with awe and relief. It was a defining moment, not just for the officer learning humility, but for Amara realizing the transformative power of truth backed by strength and courage. As the crowd dispersed and the store returned to normal, Amara and her mother walked out together. The sun had begun to dip, casting long shadows across the street, but the heat of the afternoon incident had cooled, replaced by a lingering sense of accomplishment and dignity. Amara realized something profound that day. Respect is not a gift. It is recognition of one's truth and courage. The lesson extended beyond her mother's military achievements. It was a broader reflection of the challenges faced by black girls everywhere, the invisible battles fought daily, and the resilience required to demand recognition in a world that often dismisses them. Layla embraced her daughter briefly, a gesture full of love, pride, and acknowledgement of the ordeal they had faced. "You stood your ground," she whispered. "That's all that matters. Never let anyone make you feel invisible." Amara nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment she had never experienced before. The incident in the store became a story she carried silently but proudly, a story of courage, of justice, and of the undeniable truth that strength and dignity can confront prejudice in the most ordinary places. In the weeks that followed, the story subtly spread. Locals who had witnessed the encounter shared it with friends and family, not as gossip, but as a reminder that the underestimated often possess the power to teach profound lessons. For Amara, it was a quiet revolution in self-confidence, a lesson in resilience, and a reminder of her mother's unwavering example. And while the officer may have returned to his routine, the encounter left an indelible mark, a reminder that mockery and prejudice are fragile when confronted with truth and integrity. The moral was clear. Courage is not always loud, and power does not always reside in uniform. Sometimes it resides in truth, dignity, and the unshakable bond between a parent and child who face the world together. Amara's story reminds us that injustice can be confronted with grace, that respect must be earned, and that standing up for oneself, even in small, everyday moments, can have ripple effects far beyond the immediate scene. If you were inspired by Amara and her mother's courage, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Black Voice Stories for more tales of resilience, strength, and truth.